All right, so I guess it's inevitable. I was eventually going to be talking about this. The video game crash of 83 and 1984. What's up, creepers and geekers? Chris, the Atari Creep. How's everyone doing today? I told myself after a little while, don't ever do a video on this topic. There's too much information out there already. But I'm still seeing misinformation being spoken about, especially in videos. I was watching a few videos today while waiting for my lunch to get finished here. And some of these younger cats, and it's no fault of their own, they're just going by common myths. The populace, so to speak, talking about half-witted ideas of what would have caused the crash of 83 and 84. And most commonly, these two games come up. And he specifically mentioned these, saying these two games right here were the reason that the crash itself took place in 1983. When most of us already know that is not the case. So if you've been around for a while on this internet stuff, or you were there when it all happened, obviously this isn't a video for you. Click off of it. You're not going to get any information from me that isn't already available. Wikipedia alone has a page on it, so you can read that stuff. But I just wanted to set the record straight in a paraphrase. I'm not going to go into great details with numbers and statistics, and I'm not going to mention every tiny little factor by company name and all that, but I'm going to give you the bare bones of it, the gist, and the idea of what really happened and why. You got to look at the industry as a whole. Atari was a big name in the video gaming industry, and regardless of whatever you think, they were the most responsible for creating the industry that we know now. The idea of bringing a machine home that was responsible and able to play more games than just variances of Pong, okay? Pong was huge in the 70s, from 75 to the early 80s. People had Pong units, and there was so many of those, and that also adds to this thing, okay? There was just so many of them. No one can come up with a conclusive number as to how many of these clones have been produced and been on the market. I don't think anyone could ever extensively have a 100% complete collection of Pong units. It is that crazy and that vast of a market that we're just never, ever, ever going to know, okay? But Atari pioneering the idea of bringing a machine into your home with interchangeable cartridges, programs that they called them back then, that you could pop into your machine, play for a little while, and when you got bored, there's another one. And a lot of these had multiple variances of the game. Space Invaders is an amazing example. There was, 80-something on there? It was still Space Invaders. But you could play regular Space Invaders, and hard Space Invaders, and invisible Space Invaders, and two-player at once Space Invaders, or alternating Space Invaders, and just any kind of thing that you could combat had so many. Air-Sea Battle had a bazillion games on them. So you'd go out and you'd spend whatever it was for a cartridge, pop it in, and you'd have all this variation of pretty much the same game, the idea of Pong, in theory, not the gameplay itself. But if you got bored of even that, there's another game for you, and then another game for you, and here's another one to buy. So a lot of these companies started marketing, and I believe it still works to this day, that when you release a console, you're not making money on the console itself. It's this that you make money on, okay? So Atari comes out in 1977 with the VCS. Mind you, they're still making Pong-style consoles. The same year, I believe, Stunt Cycle came out. The Atari Video Pinball unit, one of my favorites of all time from Atari, came out. And I'm sure some version of Super Quadra Duper Duper Pong came out. And then you had all the other companies. You had Magnavox still making their Odyssey 1000 series and all kinds of stuff. But the VCS comes out, and though they weren't the first to try to market the interchangeable cartridges, they were the ones that were able to do it well. And they were the ones who grabbed onto that market and took it by storm, mainly because they were able to get licenses. And a lot of people also don't know that Atari actually was doing meh with the VCS up until I think it was 81. Please correct me on that if I'm wrong. When they licensed Space Invaders. As soon as Space Invaders came out on the Atari VCS, they couldn't keep those things on the shelf. The consoles were disappearing from stores. There's a commercial making light of it, but it was a reality at the time. Space Invaders comes out for the Atari VCS. People don't have to go to that seedy arcade anymore. They don't have to deal with the greasy joysticks and the smoke-filled room if you're not a smoker, and the puke on the floor and the pus everywhere from these nerds' fucking pimples. They could come home from a hard day's work or after school, pop in their cartridge, and they have Space Invaders. So they were the ones who made it more popular, though they weren't the first ones to do it. So now you have a successful product, something that people are really latching on to. And when you talked about video games back in the day, it didn't matter what system the person had. For the most part, people would say, do you want to play Atari? And then later on, it was Nintendo. You want to play Nintendo. Didn't matter what the system was. You just used that word as a general for the product itself. Much like Band-Aids. Band-Aids a brand, but everyone pretty much calls bandages Band-Aids, okay? Go pick me up some Band-Aids, but they get the store brand, you know? It doesn't matter. So, of course, with success, people want to copy that and they want to ride that train. They need to make their monies too because they have lights to keep on. They have food that needs to be purchased. They have clothes that need for their kids, whatever. So other companies jump on board and they're trying to do their thing. Now, the Magnavox had by 1982, by the way, there were so many gaming consoles. And I'm just going to name a couple of them. You know, Magnavox came out with their Odyssey 2. The Odyssey 1 didn't do so well. Let's try the Odyssey 2, using the same idea of interchangeable cartridges. Plus, it had like a little keyboard thing to give it the idea of a computer. Also, comment below, could that thing run BASIC? I don't remember. I don't think it could. No, you had ColecoVision. The Intellivision had already been out for a number of years, and they were the main competitor, okay? And it's okay to have competitors. Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft. It's been going around for a long time now. Now, the only true constant since '85 has been Nintendo, but there's always been that circle, that trilogy, I guess you would say. But in this case, you had Coleco by 1982, by the way. Television, you had Magnavox, you had the Fairchild 2 that was out, there was the Emerson Arcadia 2001, and I could keep going on and on and on. And the two big ones, Atari and Intellivision, even had variances of those. You had the Sears Telegames ones, and you had ones through Radio Shack that were in Intellivision, okay? ColecoVision was actually making Atari 2600 clones, and they were actually on the market. They had an expansion module to play those games on their system. They got sued. It was told that, no, they just used random parts from a regular store. You can't sue them for that. So not only that, they just said, fuck you, Atari. Not only are we going to do that, but we're going to make our own system. So you see where we're going here? The market's starting to get real congested, and it's confusing as hell. You know, you have your main companies, you have all the little companies, and the main companies have other companies making the same product, but with different names and slightly different looks. No one knows what the fuck is going on here. Now let's talk about the games. Atari kind of flubbed up with their people and treated them like shit. So a bunch of guys from Atari jumped ship and started the very first third-party development company, Activision, one of the kings of video game programming of its time. The shit they could do on the Atari VCS 2600 was amazing to this day. I got a game this week that blew my mind. I had never played it. I just saw the title years ago and said, there's no way I'm going to want to play that because I know the original game, and I know this will feel like it's hindered. Kung Fu Master, which is not the same two-fighter, but it's what Kung Fu is on the NES, okay? I was blown away, and this thing came out in like 83 on the Atari VCS. So they were the masters of it. They knew what they were doing, and they gave credit to their programmers, and they paid them for their art. Atari tried to sue them. And because there was nothing already in the books as far as laws and rules regulating this kind of thing, the court said there's nothing we can do. They can make games for your system. And I'm sure there was little things in between where they had to throw a little kickback back and forth or whatever. I don't know the specifics of that. Again, it's just a basic idea. They were off to do their own thing. Now, while the lawsuit was going on, all these other companies are making games, and they're just trying to rush them out in case the case fails on Activision's part. And it turns out that you're not allowed to do that. So all these companies just start flooding the market with their shitty games, and they're just half-ass programming them, putting a label on it, putting it in stores, giving them away in promotions. And when I tell you pretty much everybody was making video games for this console, these consoles, mainly the Atari, Everybody was doing it. Quaker Oats was involved. You had Chase the Chuck Wagon, which you could get if you sent in proof of purchases from your dog food. Everybody. Porn industry was making games. A film video rental distributing company, Wizard Videos, made a couple of games. Halloween and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So, again, do you see where we're going with this? All these consoles, multiple versions of these consoles, and all the little crappy ones and all this and that. And then you have all these games from all these companies that no one even knows, and ones that we do know and don't understand why they're trying to get into electronics. There's no information out there like we have now on the internet. So now the consumer is feeling like, what the actual fuck is going on here? Stores are running out of space to sell this stuff. Prices start going down. They're trying to liquidate this stuff. Companies can't take things back because they're not selling. A lot of them are jumping out of the game just like that. And there's no one to bring them to and get refunds from. So stores are refusing to buy new product, okay? They're refusing to stock new stuff, and they're liquidating the old stuff and just trying to get something back from it, even at a loss, as long as something's coming in. And bins start showing up with Atari games for $5 and under, and television games for $5 and under, and God only knows how low all the other stuff, the ColecoVision, the Arcadias, all that crap. When the consumer sees the prices dipping like that in these big ugly bins, they lose further faith in the market in which that particular product is in. By September of '83, it got so bad that Atari finally was like, fuck it, we have all this stuff in a warehouse, and that whole burial thing happened with their product. Not just ET, it was pretty much everything that was in that Texas warehouse. The crash happened, people just stopped giving a shit. Except for the people that were kind of ignorant, they just enjoyed the fact that there were very cheap games. There were even games, and I can't find very many pictures online, but I remember this vaguely, going in a child world. There was games on the shelf for $4.99, $3.99, $2.99, and they were literally in white boxes with black lettering that would just say, Pac-Man, Atari VCS, 2600. Generic, you remember those generic labels of cornflakes? Paper towel. It literally just said what it was. It was a white box with black solid lettering. There were video games sold like that in Child World for under $5 a piece. So now that we got all that out of the way, what ended up happening further down the line is Nintendo thought that they could try to revive it. And we all know how that happened. They came over here. They test marketed a toy entertainment system with a robot and this big blocky looking thing that was very reminiscent of the American VCR. So it didn't look like a video game system. And then they rose to fame and power, but they implemented restrictions within the third-party market as far as all this stuff. And a lot more companies decided, you know, we're not going to try to get involved in this stuff. A couple, Sega kept doing their thing. Atari tried to come back and it didn't happen. And they revived it by doing it right. Though Nintendo's stronghold on third-party developers was kind of illegal, long story short, it helped out and created what we have today. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's actually a good thing that the crash happened. Because if it didn't happen, who knows where the industry could have just went... Oh, you know what? Another really big part of the crash, especially around 82 and 83, home computers. Better graphics, same games... in a lot of cases, better gameplay. Maybe in some cases not. Multiple ways of playing. You have your floppy and you have your cartridge. Floppies were copyable. Cassettes were copyable. And, of course, you could do more than just play video games on. So mom and dad were probably a little more into paying money for something that you could do the checkbook with. Or you could finance this and you can type up this report or whatever, you know. I forgot to mention all that. I do apologize for jumping all over the place. So... long story short, these two games alone did not start the crash. They are high-profile titles. And that's why when these came out and they were considered disappointing and or crap, I'm not going to tell you whether they are or not. I'm just going to say as a generality. Because they're such high-profile titles, they tend to get the blame for it. Do I think E.T. is the worst game on the planet? God, no. It's flawed because he only had 6 weeks to fucking do the thing. I have a whole video on it. And I think once you realize what you're supposed to do and you read the manual, unlike what most people did back then, it's an okay game. It's meh at best. It functions as it should with a couple of annoying glitches. Pac-Man, again, I did a whole nother video on this. I think it's a good game. I don't think it's what people think of when they think of Pac-Man. I think when they put it in there, it looks so different, it kind of threw them off. And there's a couple of things with the ghost flickering. And yeah, it has its limitations. Again, very little time to put it together and force it onto the market, but it functions perfectly. It really does. It's a fun game of Pac-Man. If you can get past, it doesn't look like Pac-Man or sound like Pac-Man. But stuff like that happened. And they tend to get blamed because, again, they're high-profile titles. So, guys, that is the gist of it. Way too much product, not enough information, stores not having room, computers being a better option for the average family, and people just giving up on it because they're just tired of CBS Electronics, Apollo making something. This, I don't know, chocolate bar company decided to make some goofy fucking game. And you can send them off for proof of purchases, and you don't have to just get them in the stores. And stores just started getting flooded, and they didn't have the room. And then when they had to get rid of the stuff, they couldn't because half these companies disappeared really quick. So, guys, I hope this was at least somewhat entertaining. I'm tired of, and I'm not really mad about it. I mean, these people are younger cats, and they don't fully know. They just, the general consensus is these games right here are the worst two of all time, and they caused the crash because people were pissed off that these big titles ended up getting fucked up, when that's not the case. They were just rushed, poorly done, but before that, there was a plethora. Would you say I have a plethora? Yes. There was a plethora of just crap out there and no regulation on it and no way to know whether or not you're going to spend your 40, 50 bucks on something that you would play for 5 seconds and be like, this sucks, and then try to bring it back in the store with it. So, guys, go ahead and leave your thoughts down below. Thumbs up, thumbs down, all feedback's positive. I just figured I'd just do my part to try to clear the air on what really did happen for the crash of 83 and 84, which technically started in 82. So, guys, thank you, as always, so much for watching. Again, this was not a scheduled video. I had no idea I was going to do it until I just watched a video. And this poor young guy was born in the 90s. He's getting all this misinformation from this, that, and the other, and going with just the general, I'm just going to call them urban tall tales, urban myths. Worst game of all time. No. I go over to my shelf and I can pull at least 10 that are astronomically worse than these two games right here combined. So, guys, again, thank you always so much for watching. I hope you're all doing well. And until next time, keep it real. Take care.